Imagine you've built your whole life on a single belief. Now, what if that belief, the one that defines your pride and your place in the world, is shattered in an instant? What if the person closest to you, the one you trust the most, is hiding something that could destroy everything you thought was true about them and about yourself? This is the shocking story of a billionaire whose perfect world came crashing down when he learned the truth about his wife. The truth she kept from him for years. How far would you go to protect your pride? Your reputation, your identity? Would you kill for it? Stay with me because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, betrayal, and what it really means to hold power in a relationship. Can you solve the mystery of what pushed a man to his breaking point? Let's uncover the truth together, piece by piece. Meet Daniel Thornton, an Australian businessman whose empire stretches across continents. From the outside, his life seems nothing short of perfect. Luxury homes in Sydney's most exclusive neighborhoods, a fleet of sleek cars, and a career that would make any entrepreneur envy. He's the picture of success, surrounded by admirers and poised at the top of his game. But beneath the polished exterior, there's something darker lurking, something no one sees. Daniel's life isn't just about wealth. It's about control, status, pride. He was raised with a single mantra. A man's worth is measured by the power he holds over others, especially the woman he calls his own. This belief shaped everything he did. From the way he conducted business to the way he chose his partners. His career soared, but with every success, his need to maintain that control, that image of dominance only grew stronger. He's meticulous, ruthless. Every decision, every move is calculated to keep him on top, to remain untouchable. His worth isn't just in his fortune. It's in his ability to make others bend to his will. But here's the thing. Daniel's belief in his superiority comes from a place of deep insecurity. He's terrified of losing the power that has defined his identity. He's terrified of being seen as weak, vulnerable, or less than what he has spent years convincing himself he is. As we walk through his world of success, remember this. For all his money, all his accomplishments, Daniel's greatest fear isn't failure. It's the truth that someone might see through the mask he's built. Because when that happens, everything he's worked so hard to build will crumble. And that fear will lead him down a dangerous path. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story about the lengths a man will go to protect his pride. The question is, how far will Daniel go when the foundation of his belief starts to crack? Let's find out. Now, let's turn our focus to Maria Santiago, the woman at the heart of this story. A woman who on the outside seems to have it all together, but is carrying a secret so heavy it could unravel everything. Maria is in her late 30s. A career woman in every sense of the word. Born and raised in the Philippines, she built her life from the ground up, establishing herself as a successful executive in a highly competitive industry. Her reputation is sterling. She's known for her intelligence, her charm, and her ability to navigate the highest circles of business with ease. On paper, she is everything Daniel could ever want in a partner: accomplished, ambitious, and beautiful. But there's something Maria doesn't want you to know. Something she's kept hidden for years. Maria is 11 years older than Daniel. And that one simple fact, the number on her birth certificate, is the thread that could unravel her entire life. Why? Because Maria is terrified. Terrified of being seen as too old for the man she loves. You see, Maria's success in the boardroom never shielded her from the insecurities that many women in her position face. In a world that constantly values youth and beauty above all else, she knows that age is seen as a disadvantage, especially for a woman. She fears that if Daniel finds out the truth, he will see her as past her prime, someone who doesn't fit the mold of what a young, successful man like him should want. So she hides it. She hides the truth about her age, believing that if Daniel truly knew, the relationship would end before it even began. She convinces herself that love is enough to bridge the gap between them. That somehow age won't matter if the connection they share is strong enough. But the fear is always there, lurking in the background. The fear that one day the truth will come out and everything she's worked for, her career, her love, her happiness will come crashing down. Maria isn't just protecting herself from rejection. She's protecting everything she's built. And in doing so, she's about to set in motion a chain of events that she might never be able to control. Maria's story is one of self-preservation, of wanting to be loved and accepted for who she is, flaws, imperfections, and all while battling the lies she's told herself and Daniel to protect her deepest fears. Now, as we move forward, think about this. How far would you go to keep a secret this big? What would you sacrifice to hold on to love when the truth could shatter it all? The stakes have never been higher for Maria, and the road ahead will demand more than she ever expected. For years, Maria Santiago has carried a secret, a lie she tells herself every single day. It's not just about the numbers. It's about what those numbers represent. And as much as she'd like to pretend it doesn't matter, it's everything. When Maria and Daniel first met, she knew the connection was undeniable. Their chemistry was instant, intense, passionate, and full of potential. They were a power couple in the making, the kind of couple people talked about in awe. Daniel with his wealth, his confidence, and his ambition. Maria with her intelligence, drive, and beauty. Together, they seemed perfect. But there was one thing Maria couldn't bring herself to share. She was 11 years older than him. At first, it seemed like a detail too small to matter. Their bond was genuine, and their shared passions made the age gap feel irrelevant. But deep down, Maria knew to Daniel it would be everything. Maria had seen the way Daniel carried himself. His rigid beliefs about pride, status, and control were impossible to ignore. He had never said it directly, but Maria could feel it in his every word. A man is always supposed to be older than the woman he loves. Age wasn't just a number to Daniel. It was a symbol of power, of authority, of the dynamic he needed to maintain in their relationship. She feared that if he knew the truth, his pride would be shattered. The very foundation of their relationship, the thing that had drawn them together, could collapse. He would see her age as a weakness, a threat to his manhood. Maria's mistake was believing that love could overcome this lie. She convinced herself that once Daniel truly got to know her, once he saw her strength, her heart, and the love they shared, he would look past her age. But as time went on, the lie grew, turning from a simple omission into something that could destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. And so, Maria kept the secret. She kept it hidden, locked away in the quietest corners of her heart, convincing herself that it would never come to light. But secrets like this don't stay hidden forever. Now Daniel is about to learn the truth. The question is, how will he react when everything he thought he knew about the woman he loves shatters in an instant? The tension is building, and the consequences of this secret will soon unfold in ways neither of them can anticipate. It was supposed to be a simple family dinner, just a gathering of loved ones enjoying a meal together. But at that dinner, everything changed in an instant. As the evening wore on, laughter filled the air, conversations. Meandering from work to vacations to the usual family gossip. And then, in the middle of it all, Maria's younger sister, Sophia, innocently asked a question that would set everything in motion. "So, Maria?" Sophia said, casually passing a bowl of salad. "How are you planning to celebrate your 40th birthday? I know you've been talking about wanting to do something special this year." The room fell silent. The sound of silverware against plates stopped as if time itself had paused. Maria's stomach dropped. She froze. Mid-bite, panic flashing across her face. But before she could recover, Daniel's gaze snapped to hers, his expression unreadable at first. Then, in the span of a heartbeat, it shifted. Shock. Confusion, disbelief. Daniel stared at Maria, his mind racing. For the briefest moment, it seemed like nothing could be wrong. But then the numbers started to form in his mind. 40th birthday. She's turning 40. The truth hit him like a cold slap. Maria had lied to him. For 5 years, he had been convinced that his wife was younger than him, only slightly younger, just a year or two. The illusion of youth, the image of a perfect equal partnership, was shattered. In an instant, Daniel realized Maria wasn't 30-some as he had believed. She was 11 years older than him. He looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. His pride was wounded. This wasn't just a simple discrepancy in age. It was a betrayal of everything he had built his sense of self upon. She had lied to him. She had lied about something so fundamental. Maria's eyes flickered with guilt and fear. But she said nothing. She knew the question had just ripped open the wound she'd carefully concealed for so long. Daniel's world was spinning. His thoughts became a blur. How could she do this to him? He had always prided himself on being in control. The older man, the one who commanded respect, who held the power in the relationship, but this truth threatened to undo it all. His voice broke the silence. A cold, sharp edge cutting through the tension. "What did you just say, Sophia?" Oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed, was looking at Maria, waiting for an answer. But it was clear that Daniel wasn't asking Sophia. He was asking his wife. Maria tried to smile, but it was weak, forced. I didn't mean to, but it was too late. The lie had been exposed. For Daniel, this wasn't just about age. This was about control, his identity, his pride. Everything he believed in was built on the idea that a man is always the dominant one in a relationship, that age was a symbol of power. And now that foundation was cracked. The conflict was here. Maria's lie had placed everything in jeopardy. Her love for him, their future, and now Daniel's fragile sense of masculinity. Could he forgive her? Or would this be the beginning of the end? The air was thick with tension as everyone waited for what would come next. After that moment, everything changed for Daniel Thornton. What started as an innocent dinner, a simple family gathering, had become the epicenter of a storm he wasn't prepared for. The weight of Maria's lie, a lie about something as fundamental as her age, now pressed heavily on him, threatening to crush everything he'd built around his pride. In the days that followed, Daniel couldn't shake the question that had planted itself in his mind. How could Maria hide this from him? It wasn't just about age. It was about the power he thought he had over their relationship. The control that had always been the foundation of their bond. And now that control was slipping away like sand through his fingers. Each time he looked at Maria, the image of her changed. She was no longer the woman he admired. She was no longer the younger, vibrant partner he had fallen in love with. She was older. She had deceived him. And suddenly every little thing about their relationship felt tainted by that one hidden truth. In the quiet moments, Daniel found himself alone with his thoughts. The more he thought, the angrier he became. What had she taken from him? He had always prided himself on being the older, more established one. It was the defining feature of his masculinity, his success, his position in life. And now he felt as though he had been knocked down from his pedestal, stripped of his perceived authority. It wasn't just a number. It was a betrayal of the very principles that made him who he was. Ego, pride, control. These were the things that consumed him now, gnawing away at his insides. Daniel began to ask himself, had Maria seen him as weak? What if she had only stayed with him because he was successful, because he had money and status, and not because of the connection they shared? What if she had been playing him all along? Distrust began to settle in. He caught himself replaying their conversations in his head, dissecting every word, every look, searching for signs of manipulation. What had she really felt? What had she hidden from him all this time? Did she think less of him because of his age? Did she think he was some fool who couldn't see through the veil of her carefully constructed story? It gnawed at him relentlessly. The more Daniel wrestled with these thoughts, the more his world began to shrink. His beliefs about control, about the man always being the dominant one, were being shattered. The very things that gave him confidence, the rigid structure he had built around his identity, were crumbling under the weight of Maria's secret. Every time they spoke, his mind wandered back to that night, the dinner table, the question, her answer. His world had shifted from one of certainty to one of doubt. Daniel's emotions were a battlefield now. His pride at war with his love. He couldn't make sense of what had happened. Could he ever trust her again? How could he reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the reality of her deception? What did this mean for their future? Was their connection built on love or on a lie? The tension between them was growing. Maria could feel it, too. Though she couldn't understand why he was withdrawing, why his demeanor had changed. She had told herself that he would accept the truth. That love would be enough. But the longer Daniel remained silent, the more she realized that something had shifted. He wasn't the same man he had been before the revelation. The emotional tension was palpable. Every interaction, every glance, every word between them felt strained, loaded with the unspoken truth that neither of them could escape. Daniel's growing anger and sense of betrayal began to consume him, pulling him further from the woman he once loved. His thoughts were a constant whirlwind of pride, control, and insecurity. And in those moments, Maria was no longer his partner. She was a stranger, someone who had taken away his most cherished belief. A woman who had shattered his identity. The day had come. The weight of Maria's secret had been hanging between them for days. A suffocating presence neither of them could ignore. Daniel's internal conflict had been escalating, his pride and ego gnawing at him relentlessly. He had spent days processing the lie, questioning every aspect of their relationship. His love for her was still there. But the betrayal he felt was too heavy to bear. Something had to give. The moment Maria entered the living room, she knew. She could feel the change in the air. The tension so thick. She could almost touch it. She had seen the way Daniel had been avoiding her. The way his eyes hardened every time he looked at her. The silence spoke louder than any words could. "Daniel, what's going on?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you acting like this?" He didn't answer immediately. He stood across the room, arms crossed, his jaw clenched, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite name. And then, as if the question had been building up for days, he finally spoke, his voice low and cold. "How old are you, Maria?" The words hit her like a physical blow. The question she had feared, she froze, the blood draining from her face as her body tensed. She had been hoping to avoid this moment, but now there was no more running. The truth was coming whether she was ready for it or not. For a moment, Maria didn't answer. She looked at Daniel, hoping to find some trace of the man she once knew. The man who had loved her despite everything. But what she saw now was something different. His eyes were hard, filled with something between confusion and anger. His pride was wounded, and it showed. "Daniel, please listen." Maria began, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and desperation. "I didn't mean to lie to you. I was just trying to protect us. Protect this relationship. I didn't want you to think less of me. I know how much this matters to you, and I was scared." But Daniel wasn't listening. His emotions had already boiled over, and he began pacing back and forth, his voice rising with each word. "So, you thought you could just keep this from me for years?" His words dripped with a mixture of betrayal and fury. "You think I wouldn't care that you were older than me? That age doesn't matter." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "What kind of fool do you take me for, Maria? You think I just look past that?" Maria's heart ached as she watched him, but she fought to stay calm to explain herself. Her hands trembled, and she took a deep breath before speaking again. I thought if you knew how much I loved you, it wouldn't matter. Age doesn't matter in love, Daniel. It's about the connection we have. Please understand. I was afraid." "Afraid?" Daniel interrupted, his voice harsh. "Afraid? You were afraid I'd leave you, and that's why you lied to me. You were afraid I wouldn't want you. No, you didn't trust me. You didn't trust me enough to think I'd accept you for who you are. And now you've made a fool of me. All these years I've been living a lie." His words hit her like a slap. She tried to speak, to explain herself, but the more she tried, the more Daniel lashed out. His pride was taking over, and it was as if the love they once shared was disappearing before her eyes, replaced by a version of him she didn't recognize. The man she had loved was fading away, consumed by something darker. "You didn't trust me, Daniel," continued, his face twisted in anger. "I spent all this time defending you to my family, to my friends, to myself, and this whole time I didn't know the truth. You've been playing me, Maria, and now I look like an idiot." Maria's chest tightened as her heart broke. She had never wanted this. She had never wanted to hurt him. She just wanted to protect the love they shared. But now, the truth was out, and she couldn't take it back. She could see it in his eyes, the emotional wall he was building, brick by brick. The man she loved was slipping away. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I love you, Daniel. I thought we could get past it, that we could be happy. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted us to be together." But Daniel didn't hear her. He was too lost in his own anger, his own betrayal, too consumed by the image of the perfect relationship he had built in his mind. The one that was now shattered by a lie. He was beyond reasoning, beyond understanding. "You should have told me," he said, his voice cold now, the anger turning to something darker. "You should have trusted me. You should have respected me enough to be honest with me. But now, I can't even look at you the same way." The finality in his words cut through her, leaving her breathless. She wanted to explain, to fix it, but there was no fixing this. The damage was done and the illusion of their relationship was broken. The emotional wall between them was now fully built. Daniel had made his decision. He couldn't let go of his pride and Maria. Couldn't change the past. The confrontation had reached its peak. The cracks in their relationship were now wide open. Maria's lie had exposed more than just her age. It had uncovered the fragile, brittle foundation on which their love was built. The conflict between her deception and Daniel's bruised ego had reached a point of no return. This was no longer about love. It was about power. And in this battle for control, someone was going to lose everything. The confrontation was far from over. Daniel's anger still burned. Each word he spoke, leaving deep, jagged wounds. His gaze was cold now. His face set in stone, as if he had already decided there was no turning back from the truth Maria had hidden from him. But for Maria, the battle wasn't over. She had no choice but to fight to salvage what was left of their love, to stop the emotional devastation from consuming them both. She had never imagined that a lie about her age would lead them here. But she could not give up without trying to fix it. Maria's voice broke the silence. A fragile tremor that reflected her vulnerability more than any words could. "Daniel, please, please. I didn't mean for it to be like this." She took a step closer. Her eyes brimming with tears, her hands trembling at her sides. "I was afraid. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you'd leave me. I thought you wouldn't love me if you knew the truth." Her words came out in a rush, almost as if she were pleading with him to understand the core of her fear. The fear of rejection, the fear of losing him. "I love you, Daniel. I've always loved you," she whispered, her voice soft but desperate. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have to know that." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening as he tried to process her words. But inside, he was struggling, too. The shock of the lie, the emotional betrayal, and now the intensity of Maria's pleas were too much to bear. It felt like his world was collapsing on him, and Maria's vulnerability only made it harder to think clearly. She took another step closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm so sorry," she continued, her voice cracking. "I was scared. Okay. Scared that if you knew, you'd think I wasn't good enough for you. I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to be judged. I just wanted us to be happy." But as Maria spoke, the distance between them grew, even though she was standing just feet away. Daniel was retreating emotionally, his mind racing with hurt, anger, and confusion. The warmth he had once felt for her had been replaced by a cold, gnawing feeling that grew stronger with every tear Maria shed. His eyes locked onto hers and he spoke. His voice now hollow, empty of the warmth it once held. "Don't you get it? You didn't just lie about your age. You lied to me about everything." His voice rose again, filled with pain and disbelief. "You think I wouldn't love you? That's why you had to hide the truth. You think I can't love you because you're older? Or is it that you didn't trust me enough to be honest?" Maria's breath caught and she took another step forward. Despite the emotional wall between them, she wanted to reach him, to make him see how much she cared for him, how much she was genuinely sorry. "Daniel, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to make you feel like you weren't enough for me. You are. You always have been." Tears streamed down her face as she reached out. But she stopped herself, knowing she couldn't force him to understand her pain. For a brief moment, the room was silent, and Maria's words hung in the air between them, echoing with unspoken regret. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she had never imagined. Not just because of the secret she had kept, but because Daniel's reaction was so much worse than she could have predicted. Maria wiped her eyes, trying to steady herself. She wasn't just fighting to save their relationship. She was fighting to save herself from the emotional collapse that threatened to take over. "I love you more than anything in this world," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, raw with emotion. "I didn't want to lose you, but I've made mistakes. I've made a huge mistake, and I am so sorry. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could change everything, but instead of the understanding she hoped for." Daniel's expression hardened further. The gulf between them felt wider now. The trust shattered, and no amount of apologizing could bridge it. His pride, his sense of betrayal had consumed him. "You really think sorry is going to fix this?" Daniel's voice was steady now, but the coldness in it cut deeper than any shout. "You've been lying to me for 5 years. Everything I believed, everything we built was based on a lie." His words were like a slow, painful exhale of everything he had kept bottled up. Maria's heart broke all over again. It was clear now. The damage was done. She couldn't undo the years of deception, no matter how much she begged or apologized. She couldn't erase the fact that Daniel's trust in her had been shattered beyond repair. "Please, Daniel," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Please, I'm begging you. Don't let this be the end. We've been through so much together. I still love you." But Daniel didn't hear her. He was beyond hearing. He had already made up his mind, his ego, his belief in his own superiority. The pride that had defined him for so long, all of it had been fractured by one simple lie about age. He wasn't the man he used to be in her eyes. And now, neither was she. Maria stood there, her hands trembling. Helpless. The love she had worked so hard to protect was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Sequence, the tragic decision. The tension in the room was suffocating. Daniel stood across from Maria, a man undone by his own ego, torn between the woman he once loved and the identity he had built around control, power, and pride. His emotions were a storm, a volatile mix of betrayal, humiliation, and anger that clouded his judgment, made him feel like he was losing everything. Maria, her face pale and eyes red from crying, clung to the last thread of hope. She reached out to him, desperate, trying to make him see past the hurt, to the love they had once shared, to the future they could still have, if only he could find it in himself to let go of the lie and the pain. "Daniel, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "Don't let this be the end. We've built so much together. We have love. We have a family. Focus on that. Don't throw it all away for something like this. Age doesn't matter. What matters is what we have." But Daniel's expression was cold, impenetrable. He could barely hear her anymore. Her words were like a distant echo, fading as his own thoughts took over. "What kind of man am I if I let this go? What does it say about me if I'm the one who's weaker. His pride had already been bruised beyond repair, and now it was turning into something darker, something dangerous. The man, he thought he was the one who was supposed to be in control. The one who was supposed to stand tall was slipping away from him. All because of one thing, Maria's deception about her age. Maria could see the change in him. She had never seen him like this before. So lost, so consumed. She could feel the shift in the air, the way he had pulled away from her. He was no longer the man who had swept her off her feet. He was someone else now, someone she didn't recognize, and it terrified her. Daniel. Please listen to me, she pleaded again, her voice breaking. I love you. I've always loved you. You mean everything to me. But this can't destroy us. I made a mistake. Please don't let your pride do this to us. Please. But the words felt empty now. Her desperation only seemed to fuel his anger, deepening the rift between them. He couldn't hear her anymore. He couldn't bear the thought of being the one who was less of a man, less of a husband, less of the partner he believed he should be. The thought of being weak, of being vulnerable, gnawed at him like a poison. Daniel took a step back, shaking his head as if trying to shake off the emotions, trying to convince himself that he was in control. But he wasn't. I can't do this anymore, Maria. He said quietly, his voice eerily calm, you lied to me. You made a fool of me. I gave everything to you, and now I'm just supposed to pretend like it doesn't matter. Maria took another step toward him, her heart racing as she saw the finality in his eyes. She could see it in the way he was pulling away both physically and emotionally. Her breath caught in her throat. No, Daniel. Please. You can't let this define us. Please, we can fix this. We can rebuild it. We can still have a future together. Don't let this be the end. Not like this. I love you. But Daniel's eyes hardened. His mind was made up. The weight of his pride had become too heavy to carry, too overwhelming to ignore. He couldn't walk away from the idea that he had lost, that somehow Maria had made him less than the man he had believed he was, that the lie about her age had shattered his very sense of identity, of authority. Maria stepped closer, trying desperately to reach him. But Daniel took another step back, the distance between them growing, both physically and emotionally. He was slipping away from her. Her words were falling on deaf ears now. Daniel, please, she cried out, her voice full of pain and fear. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. We can fix this. Just please don't let your anger control you. Don't do something you'll regret. But Daniel was beyond reasoning. The storm inside him had already broken loose. His pride, his sense of manhood, his desperation to feel in control again, were louder than her voice, louder than the love they had shared. In a split second, Daniel made a choice. It wasn't rational. It wasn't something he had planned, but it was a choice driven by an overwhelming need to reassert control, to regain his sense of power at any cost. Without warning, Daniel's hands clenched into fists, his body tense. His eyes, once full of love and warmth, were now filled with something darker. Anger, resentment, and a need to destroy what had broken him. Maria could see it too late. She could feel it. The sudden shift, the coldness, the tension in the room thickened. She tried to reach for him, tried to calm him, but there was no stopping what was about to happen. I loved you. The words slipped from her lips. A final plea that Daniel couldn't hear. And then in an instant, it was done. The rage and pride that had been building for days exploded into a tragic decision. The moment that would forever change the course of their lives. And end Maria's life in an irreversible way. The tragic decision was made. The consequences would haunt Daniel forever. After the tragic event, Daniel finds himself sitting alone in the silence of his home. The weight of what he has just done presses down on him with a suffocating force. He stares blankly at the walls. His mind in a daze, unable to comprehend the destruction he has caused. Maria is gone. And in the wake of her absence, the reality of his actions begins to settle in like a slow, unbearable wave crashing over him. The house, once filled with love and laughter, is now eerily quiet. The images of their shared moments, their life together, haunt him as he replays the events over and over in his head. How could he have done this? The answer seems distant, lost beneath layers of pride, ego, and societal expectations that have defined his life for so long. He reaches for his phone, but doesn't know who to call. His old friends. They'd never understand. His colleagues, the ones who'd admired his success, his image, they'd never see the real him. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. A visitor. At this hour, he gets up slowly, almost mechanically, and opens the door. Standing before him is an old friend, someone from his past who knows him better than anyone else. It's Nick Dawson, a man who used to be a close confidant, someone who shared the same world of business and ambition, but who had stepped away from it all years ago after a personal crisis of his own. Nick looks at him with a mix of concern and understanding. He doesn't need to say anything. The tension in the air tells Daniel everything. Nick knows. Nick knows what has happened. And he's come not just as a friend, but as someone who has been through something similar. Someone who can see the destruction in Daniel's eyes, the pain, the emptiness. Nick steps inside, looking around at the house that now feels cold and hollow. And then he turns back to Daniel, his expression grave. I've been where you are, Daniel. His voice is calm. Measured. But there's a weight to it. I get it. Daniel stands there, numb. Unable to speak. His heart is still pounding from the chaos of the night. But now a new emotion rises within him. Something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. Deep raw shame. Nick continues. His words cutting through the haze that had surrounded Daniel's mind. You think this is about Maria, don't you? About her lying. About her age. About your pride. But I've seen this before, Daniel. Nick pauses, his eyes softening. With empathy. This isn't about her. It never was. This is about you. This is about how you let the world tell you who you were supposed to be. Daniel looks at Nick, his hands trembling slightly as he tries to grasp the depth of what Nick is saying. But it's difficult. Too difficult to process. You can't keep living like this. In this prison you've built for yourself, Nick continues, sitting down on the couch, his voice steady but full of regret. We're all told lies about what makes us men, about what makes us valuable. I know that feeling, that need to prove yourself, to be seen as strong, to be respected. But it's all a lie, Daniel. And now look where we are. Look at what it's cost you. Daniel's internal struggle deepens. The words are starting to land, but they don't feel real. What Nick is saying doesn't match the image of who Daniel thought he was. It's a harsh truth, one he's avoided for so long. His need to control, to validate himself through his success, his relationships. His ability to be the stronger one has now shattered his world. Nick doesn't let up. He leans forward, his gaze steady. I watched my own pride ruin my life. Daniel, it wasn't a woman. It wasn't my job. It was my refusal to let go of this false idea of manhood that I had been fed. I nearly lost everything. Just like you. But the real tragedy was realizing that it wasn't her fault. It was mine. And it sounds like you're about to realize the same thing. Daniel is no longer just battling external forces. He is now fighting against the inner turmoil that has haunted him for years. His beliefs about control, masculinity, and strength have all collapsed in an instant, leaving him broken and forced to confront the truth of his actions. This moment becomes the turning point where Daniel realizes he has lost everything, not just Maria, but the man he thought he was. And the hardest truth to face, he can never go back. The news of Maria's death spreads like wildfire, carried by every local and national news outlet. Headlines blare. Australian billionaire arrested. After pregnant wife found dead in home. The world watches as Daniel Thornton's once untouchable empire crumbles in the wake of a single tragic decision. As the media swarms, the coverage focuses on the shocking details of the murder. A wealthy, successful businessman who had it all, now reduced to a man accused of the unthinkable. News anchors dissect every aspect of his life, from his business ventures to his seemingly perfect marriage with Maria, the beautiful Filipino woman who had been by his side for years. The fact that she was pregnant with their second child, adds a further layer of tragedy to the story, highlighting the senselessness of the act. Family members, once proud of Daniel's success, are now left to grapple with a nightmarish reality. Maria's family is devastated, trying to make sense of the betrayal and loss. Maria's sister, Anna, gives an emotional statement to the press, her voice trembling as she recounts how Maria had been nothing but loving and dedicated to Daniel, never expecting the relationship to end in violence. The words of forgiveness, however, are absent. The weight of the lie Maria kept hidden weighs heavily on the family, but they know that no amount of explanation can bring her back. Meanwhile, Daniel's family, especially his parents, struggle to understand how their son could have crossed such a line. They had watched him grow into the man they thought could never fail. His father, once his greatest supporter, is now confronted with the unbearable truth. His son has become everything he feared, a victim of his own beliefs. Daniel's mother, unable to speak through her tears, can only offer words of regret. Haunted by the fact that she had always pushed her son to uphold family traditions that she now sees as destructive. The investigation into Maria's death quickly unfolds with police combing through the evidence left behind at the scene. They find the gun used to kill her, a purchased weapon Daniel had kept hidden in a lockbox. The forensic evidence confirms it was an execution-style killing, a single shot to the head. Close range, no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. Maria had been caught completely off guard. As detectives piece together the timeline, it becomes clear that Daniel had time to think before he acted. He left the house, drove to a bar, drank heavily, and then returned home, retrieved the gun, and made the decision to end Maria's life. The signs of premeditation are undeniable. This was no spontaneous act of rage. This was a calculated decision driven by ego, pride, and an overwhelming need to reassert control. The moment of arrest is silent and cold. As Daniel sits in his armchair, almost emotionless. The detectives who arrive at his home find him exactly as the media described. A man who once had everything now shattered, stripped of his wealth, his power, and any semblance of the man he thought he was. When they approach him, Daniel doesn't resist. He doesn't argue, doesn't plead for mercy. He simply sets down his drink, places his hands in the air, and accepts his fate. His arrest is captured on camera. The final image of a man who had fallen from the highest heights to the deepest depths in the span of a single night. The courtroom battle begins with Daniel facing charges of first-degree murder, including the killing of his unborn child. His defense attempts to claim that it was an act of passion, that the shock of the revelation about Maria's age drove him to the brink. But the evidence is clear. The prosecution paints a chilling portrait of a man consumed by pride, unable to handle the internal conflict and emotional turmoil he had kept hidden for years. Family members testify against him, their voices full of disbelief and sadness as they explain how Daniel's obsession with maintaining a certain image had affected his relationships, especially with Maria. The cracks in his character are exposed for the world to see a man who built his identity on pride, control, and an outdated definition of masculinity and who could not cope when that identity was threatened. As Daniel is led away to prison, the gravity of the situation hits him. He is no longer the successful businessman who commanded respect. He is now just another inmate, facing life in prison. His legacy forever tarnished by a tragic act of violence that could have been avoided if only he had dealt with his emotions differently. The loss of Maria reverberates through her family like a punch to the gut. Her parents, who had always been proud of their daughter's strength and determination, now find themselves grappling with a bitter reality. The woman they raised so full of life, love, and promise was taken from them in an unspeakably violent way. The betrayal cuts deeper as they slowly piece together the truth that Maria had been hiding a significant part of herself from them for years. The secret of her age, the lie she kept from Daniel. The lie that ultimately led to her death. Maria's sister Anna is particularly devastated. She remembers Maria as the protector, the one who had always been there for her, the one who shared dreams, fears, and laughter. Now Anna is left with an empty space in her life, haunted by the realization that Maria's fear of rejection led her to hide such a pivotal truth. Anna can't help but wonder, could things have been different if Maria had just told the truth? Would Daniel have still loved her? Would they still be here together as a family instead of in mourning? Maria's mother, Lena, a woman who had worked tirelessly to support her family, feels an unbearable guilt. She was the one who had encouraged Maria to follow her dreams, to be strong, to never let anyone define her. Yet, it was those same dreams that led Maria to Daniel. And it was that relationship that ultimately led to her death. Lena keeps asking herself if she had missed the signs, if she could have done something to help her daughter, to guide her away from the path that led to Daniel's destruction. There's a deep resentment that grows within Maria's family. Not just for Daniel's actions, but for the secrecy Maria held on to. They mourn not only her death, but the lost opportunity to truly know her, to understand the burdens she carried in silence. The weight of this betrayal feels suffocating, especially knowing that Maria's last moments were filled with fear and isolation, afraid to tell the truth, afraid of losing the man she loved. They now have to pick up the pieces of their lives, grieving the loss of a sister, daughter, and mother, but also confronting the fact that the lie she told was part of a much larger web of emotional turmoil. It becomes painfully clear that in their grief, they are now forced to question everything Maria believed about love, trust, and sacrifice. And it's a question that will haunt them for a long time. Could love ever be truly unconditional? For Daniel's family, the fallout is equally devastating, though in a completely different way. Daniel's mother, Clara, is the one who feels the full weight of the public and private shame. She has always been proud of her son, the successful businessman, the charming partner, the family heir. But now she faces the cruel truth. Her son has become a killer, and she will never be able to erase that from her legacy. As she watches Daniel's mug shot plastered across every news outlet, Clara's world crumbles. She had known that Daniel's beliefs about age and power were rigid, but she never thought they could lead him to this. She had quietly expressed doubts about the relationship with Maria, had warned him about her tendency to hide things, but she never imagined it would turn into a life or death matter. Now her fears have come true, and they have destroyed her family's reputation in one tragic act of violence. Clara sits in silence for hours, unable to make sense of what has happened. She keeps wondering if there was something more she could have said, something more she could have done to change the course of Daniel's life. Her mind races back to all the years she spent encouraging him to uphold the family name, to be proud, to follow the rules, to be a man of strength and control. But now she sees the truth. Those same rules have cost her everything. They have dismantled her family in ways she cannot repair. Daniel's father Arthur is a man of few words, but his guilt is no less profound. He has always believed in the importance of family legacy. He had passed down his beliefs to Daniel. The idea that a man's worth was in his actions, in how he asserted control and dominance. Now that belief feels like a curse. Arthur had always been proud of the man Daniel was becoming. But now he can only think of the unforgivable. His son is locked away for murder, and nothing can erase that stain from the family name. Arthur's internal conflict grows as the trial begins. The shame of his son's actions causes him to distance himself from his friends. From his colleagues, he hides in private, avoiding family gatherings and dreading the inevitable questions. His once proud legacy feels like a distant memory lost to the world's judgment. The greatest emotional toll, however, falls on Daniel's younger sister, Ella. As she watches her brother spiral into a prison sentence, she feels the deep conflict of familial loyalty. She had always looked up to him, admired him for his success, his charisma. She had never imagined he could commit such a heinous crime. She wonders if she truly knew him or if she was just another person caught in the illusion of the man he pretended to be. Ella struggles with her identity now. She too had been raised to believe that family reputation was everything. That family loyalty meant standing by each other no matter what. But now her loyalty feels misplaced. And the damage Daniel has caused makes her wonder if she's even capable of redemption. Inside the cold, sterile walls of his prison cell, Daniel Thornton's world is a far cry from the luxury and power he once wielded. His days are long and filled with the hum of prison life. But at night, the silence eats away at him, forcing him to confront the unimaginable consequences of his actions. As he lies awake in the darkness, Daniel's mind often drifts to the night he killed Maria. The final confrontation, the moment of rage that led him to take her life, plays over and over in his head, each time more devastating than the last. He never expected to be here. Trapped in a cage of his own making, haunted by the lie he never saw coming. His thoughts often return to the belief system that governed his life. The idea that a man's worth is measured by his power, his control, his ability to dominate. These beliefs, passed down by his father and ingrained in him since childhood, shaped every decision he made. He thought he was strong, that his ego and pride were signs of manhood. But now, in the stillness of his prison cell, he sees the truth. His ego was a prison. His pride was his downfall. Daniel reflects on the words he once said, how he had mocked Darnell for marrying an older woman. How he had once called it weak, something he would never do. He sees himself now, the man who violated the very principle he had spent his entire life upholding. He had become the very thing he despised. As the months stretch into years, Daniel realizes that his fragile sense of masculinity, built on the foundation of societal expectations and old-fashioned beliefs, was unfit for the real world. In his pursuit of power, he lost everything. His wife, his family, his future. And now, locked away in prison, the reality of his actions, the cost of his ego becomes crystal clear. If this story has shaken you, it's time to examine your own beliefs about power, control, and pride. What values shape your decisions? What lies are you telling yourself? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that make us rethink everything we thought we knew. This is the story of how a man's fragile ego shattered the life he had worked so hard to build. It's the story of how pride, unchecked and unchallenged, led him to destroy everything he loved. But how many others are out there silently living with the same lies, the same fragile identities? How many of us are bound by the weight of societal expectations, allowing them to dictate our actions and decisions without questioning the cost? Let us know your thoughts in the comments and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it will help them confront the invisible pressures that threaten to break them down. Maybe it will spark a conversation about what it truly means to be a man in today's world and how we can redefine strength and self-worth before it's too